Our two speakers tonight have amazing credentials. I'll start with Kari Cherelus. RDH DA is a consultant, coach, speaker, and author that has 24 years of experience in the dental industry. Kari knows firsthand how working in a hostile work environment can contribute to the feeling of burnout negatively affecting one's overall health and confidence. Her passion to help others motivated her to write the book, The Ultimate Guide for Dental Hygienist Burnout. She uses her platform as a CEO and founder of KMC Strategic Solutions to help improve the work culture and teams and organizations. She firmly believes it is only when we have made positive changes from within ourselves that we can influence change within others. Kari, thank you. Thank you for being here. And your co-speaker tonight, your dear friend, Dr. Lara Brenner. Practiced for 10 years before leaving clinical dentistry to become a blogger, a speaker, and a certified professional coach. After her blog post, 10 Reasons Your Dentist Probably Hates You Too, went viral, she began connecting with dental professionals around the world who wanted more from their careers. This inspired her to create Lolabee's Career Coaching to help dental professionals design their careers on their terms so they can live a joyful, balanced life. Please help me welcome everyone, our amazing coaches and teachers tonight, Kari and Lara.
Did you guys know that a couple of years ago, the World Health Organization designated burnout as an occupational hazard? And it also has an ICD code. Now, you guys know what ICD codes are, right? Like that's a real diagnosis in the medical industry. And that's a great thing for us because in dentistry, I know how we all know that we have to have diagnoses before we can create the right treatment plan. So tonight, Kari and I are excited to be here. Thank you, Anne, for the awesome introduction. And Christy for sharing your Pulp Dent company profiles, amazing. And we're here to share with you guys tonight how to diagnose your burnout if you are burnt out, and then how to find the right treatment plan. Because we all know in dentistry, they say you have to find the right treatment plan in order to find the right diagnosis. So we're going to dive in. Before we do that, we're just going to share a little bit about ourselves. I, as you just heard, practiced dentistry for 10 years. And it was in year 3 that I became so burnt out that I thought I hated my career. And the biggest challenge of that was I thought there's no way I can be burnt out so early in my career. There's just no way. I mean, this should take me 20 years. But sure enough, there are studies that show that even medical students are burnt out in medical school. So we know that it's not necessarily a time thing. And I spent the next 7 years of my career on the roller coaster of hating my career and then justifying why it was okay to stay and trying to make it better, but really going into these very deep valleys of anxiety and depression. And I didn't know it was burnout because I graduated school in 2001 and no one was talking about burnout in 2004. So it wasn't until 2020 that I was doing a presentation for the local dental society here in Denver that I started researching burnout. And I realized that I had every single sign of burnout back in the day. And so it was really an eye-opening experience for me because there were questions of, well, I had to quit dentistry after 10 years. And I did have questions of, well, could my fate have been different if I had known? And so part of why we're here to share with you guys is let's help you. If you're burnt out, let's try to save your career because you've invested a lot to be here. But we'll also share with you how maybe if that's not exactly what you want, that there are some other great options too. So that's a very brief, my story's long. That's a brief summary. So I'm going to pass it over to Kari now so you can share your story of burnout.
I will take the baton. So my story is similar. I am not a dentist. I'm a dental hygienist. I started off as a dental assistant. I've been in the dental field, like we said, for 24 years. I've been a hygienist for, I guess, 17, basically. So my story is that I really wanted to get into the dental field. I wanted to be a hygienist. I started with dental assisting. For my first job, I was bullied by the associate dentist, who was the person who hired me, a female dentist, who I thought would mentor me. Then I continued to go into my field, and I had a really good office that I worked at when I first came to Florida. That's called my unicorn office in my book. I could not get a hygiene position there. When I was pregnant with my Quinny, one of the hygienists was retiring. And even though I didn't necessarily want to do clinical, I still tried to slide in. Like, are you guys hiring for a day? Because that office is so amazing. But most of the offices that I have worked in, I dealt with gaslighting, which I didn't know what that was at the time. I just know that I started to feel crazy, like, what's really happening? Because the story wasn't adding up, what they were saying and what I was experiencing. I experienced discrimination. At times I couldn't even get a job, or I would go into a job interview and not get interviewed. In this day and age, we're not in the 60s or 50s or whatever. I dealt with, so much. I just knew that I was not liking my jobs, and I loved my patients. I was good at my job. I often became lead hygienist, but I often felt like I was losing my voice, especially one of the last offices that I worked at. I felt like I was losing my voice. They were starting to stereotype me as mad Black woman. And I started crying in my car. I am not a crier. I resist crying even to this day. Now that I've had my son, I will allow myself to cry. But when I know that wasn't good for me. And so about the same time that Dr. Laura, I always say doctor, it doesn't matter. I'm going to always do that.
You don't have to.
I know what I'm going to do. But basically, 2020 is about when I started my journey about burnout as well. So I really started following a fellow DEW, Jasmine Haley. I was following her podcast, Beyond the Prophy, and it was talking a lot about burnouts, about, before 2020, I started following that. And then I really started investigating burnout and recognized that's what I had been dealing with. And after I started going through the deep dive and recognizing that it wasn't just me, I went on Facebook and I saw that so many of my colleagues were dealing with the same thing. That's when I wrote my book and I did more research and I started really getting into speaking and everything. And so that's mainly my story. And my story is that I know so many of us have the same issues in dentistry. Outside of dentistry, we see the great resignation is happening. And my thing is, I really want to help everyone. So fellow colleagues, everyone outside of our profession, because I know how debilitating it is and how you can feel like you have a small voice, and we want to just share our voices with everyone. So that's my story is I know how it is. I know how I felt, and I don't want anyone to feel that way anymore.
It's amazing how many of us experience this. So, Kari, why don't you share so we can share with everyone what the signs and symptoms of burnout are, so you can recognize it in yourselves. Do you want to share a couple of your things you noticed that you experienced that really screamed burnout?
Sure. So for me, insomnia, and that's one of the things that they talk about with WHO. So I wasn't going to sleep anytime on that, because before Quinn, he is now sleeping through the night and everything. Sometimes I'm not, I'm on the internet scrolling because I'm stuck on his schedule. But before him, I could go to sleep at the drop of a pen. My husband will be talking to me and I'd fall asleep. But when I started having these bad issues at work, I would be listening to my husband breathe, maybe he needs Mile, everything, but I would listen to him breathing and everything. And I'm just thinking about what's going on throughout the day. I'm trying to fall asleep. Another thing was I started to have acne really bad. I do tend to have acne. I have combination skin. However, at that one particular office, I started having it all down my neck. It was bad. My stomach was in knots. Like I said, I was crying in my car. I did start to get cynical because people were gossiping about me. I was getting bullied and everything like that. So I did start to not really care as much. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that, you start messing up on the job because you feel like no one cares anyways about what's going on with you. So I did start to get a little negative, and I try to be a very positive person for the most part. So those were some of my main symptoms. And I was complaining a lot, like a lot to my family, to my friends, anyone who would listen. I was complaining to the fact where my friends were like, what's up with you in dentistry? And because it kept happening at every single job. And so then, you start to feel like, if this keeps happening, maybe it's me. And so that's what I started feeling like something's wrong with me. I was losing my confidence as well.
I had some physical signs myself, insomnia for sure, and I was getting sick more often with colds and stuff like that, or even like stomach bugs. But for me, the biggest thing that really, really was screaming burnout was, I'm going to say it, I hated my patients. I couldn't stand them. I like, and so really what that was compassion fatigue. It was like, I stopped feeling empathy for them. I stopped feeling like I wanted to help them. I just resented them. And so I had no compassion for them whatsoever. So this is sort of the joke with 10 reasons your dentist probably hates you too. It's like, I hated them right back, but that was not who I was. Like, that was a really tough pill to swallow, because I got into dentistry because I wanted to help people. And I think so many of us have that experience. So if we start seeing the patients as the enemy, I think that's really important to take a step back and look at, okay, what else is going on here? And then the other thing that was really huge for me was I couldn't celebrate my wins. I couldn't see that I had these amazing dental accomplishments, and I couldn't celebrate how I was helping someone because I was always too worried, too busy worrying and thinking something was going to go wrong, that I couldn't celebrate my wins. So for me, those were the two strongest things. And Kari, you mentioned a little bit ago that there are these other factors. So what do you think are the variables that can really affect burnout, that are outside of our immediate control?
Well, there's so much. I mean, now I'm a parent and everything. So even though I'm not really an occupational burnout, but like I said, now he's sleeping through the night. And so imagine someone is working clinically and then they have to deal with their child being sick, or, they didn't have the best night, or they're having issues in their marriage, or someone's sick in their family. Like with COVID, like my father was sick overseas with COVID and W pneumonia after I had Quinn 3 months later. So all those different factors. Also, there's people who are single parents or live in rural different areas. So sometimes people are stuck. Maybe they want out of their job, but all those different variables keeps them stuck in a place where they don't leave, or they're afraid to change, because what if things are worse than what they're dealing with? What if the environment is more hostile, or they have to see even more patients, or like there's a switcheroo, or, sometimes on dental forums, they're like, well, if you leave that job, there's always a bully and everything. So there's so many different variables that everyone has to deal with, that I try to focus on when I talk to different people, because we all have different situations going in our lives. My situation isn't going to be the same situation as everyone here, because we all have different spouses. We may have kids or not have kids. We may have pets that are sick. There's a million different things that are going on in our lives at one time. So even though it's our jobs, we also are humans, and what happens at home goes to our work, and what happens at work goes back home with us, at least with me and everything. I'm not able to shut that off. That's just not me. I'm an empath, so I'm a whole person.
I just the other day spoke with this dentist who had this super successful practice, and he was like a hardcore, lot of patients, a lot of operatories, and he got sick. And when he lost his physical health, he was just becoming so burnt out. So all these things really do matter. And I think it's important at this point as well to really narrow down. So now we know a lot of the signs are, irritability, lack of patience, getting sick, being tired. You have that compassion fatigue. You can't celebrate your successes. You just can't even see your wins. And then one of the things that I think about all the time, because Anne just said it, Kari and I have talked about this, we get burnt out all the time in our jobs now. It's like we love what we do, that we work so hard that we burn ourselves out. And that was a real eye-opening experience for me, because my original experience with burnout was that I hated my career and I was burned out. And then 10 years later, I left dentistry 10 years ago. 10 years later, I find myself in this career that I love. And I'm like, oh, this is burnout. Right. And so I think it's really important to distinguish, if you guys are feeling burnt out. There's two types of burnout. There's burnout when you love what you do, and there's burnout when you don't love what you do, or I'm going to say it, hate. Sorry, I know a lot of people don't like that word, but it's important to be real. And the reason that's important is because, again, like, that's the diagnosis. If we can figure out the root cause of what's creating your burnout, then we can find the right treatment plans. And so we want to share with you guys some qualifications for, like, a short checklist for how will you know, how can you differentiate the burnout? And if you don't know, a couple of questions are, how do you feel after a vacation? If you feel excited and refreshed, if you feel ready to come back home and refreshed after a vacation, I would say you probably love your work, but you're just burnt out. You need that break. And the same thing goes for when you get support and other kinds of breaks that you take. And then another question to consider is, how do you feel if you've ever worked 5 days a week and then decreased your days? How do you feel after that? If it's not helping, then maybe there's a little more going on. And then the third question is, how do you feel after you incorporate that self-care into your life? Kari talked about sleeping and family time and other stuff like that. So if you're trying all these things to make it better and it's not helping, you're still feeling the same way, then maybe that puts you in the category where there's a deeper thing, a deeper problem that we might need to consider. Maybe there are some other treatment plans for that kind of burnout where you don't love your career anymore. So
I just wanted to say that I think, Laura, we talked about this before, that we both, I don't know, we're pretty similar. It seems like we both were green, green necklace. We did not plan this. We did not plan to be the Doublemint twins and everything, but we would go on vacation. Didn't we say we would go on vacation every 3 months? And while on vacation, we would think about our next vacation and everything. And so that's not, it's cool. I love going on vacation, but you're not even enjoying that one vacation. You're thinking about the next and everything. So you're trying to, get through work by thinking about another fabulous place to go to. So that's definitely on that checklist with that whole vacation thing.
And I just want to add one more thing is, I would even dread, like, I hated coming back to my life. So I didn't feel refreshed. So it was, not only was I thinking about the next vacation, but I was depressed 2 days into my 7-day vacation that I had to go back to my life. So that's a sign. We need to look out for that.